TL Talk, especially on a subject that I'm very passionate about, diversity. I wanted to go ahead and thank all of those that have been joining us over the past few months since we started this in April. Thank you so much for joining the conversation, for tracking our topics and all your feedback. I value it immensely. We've reached now 40,000 views, which is just fantastic. Thank you so much. So I wanted to firstly, as you can see, I'm back in a different backdrop. I'm back to Miami. I am at the beautiful East Miami once again, who has welcomed me over and over with open arms, tents for the kids in the rooms, you know, the best views of downtown Miami. So I couldn't be happier to be back on the road. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, the objective with RTL Talks has been since the beginning to be able to share some positive energy, to try to help our industry, help our partners and our friends who are going through the storm like all of us, and give them a little boost, a little motivation, a little inspiration to carry through. So that's what's holding us. That's what joins us here today. If you like what you see, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and share it. The more people we can reach with the positive energy, I think the happier we'll be and the quicker we'll move forward. For those that do not know me, my name is Tina Lira. I am the founder of TL Portfolio, which is a sales and marketing and PR representation company with offices throughout North and South America. I am Brazilian. I grew up in Mexico. I studied in Switzerland, and then I dove headfirst into luxury travel. And I've been with companies such as the Intercontinental in Rio, Hyatt in Paris, Mandarin Oriental in New York. I did the opening of the Ritz-Carlton in New York, Singapore with Four Seasons, and so on. And I'm thrilled to be able to join all of this amazing panel. And I'm going to go ahead and dive straight into it and introduce our panel. We're going to start with Erina Pindar. Erina, thank you for joining us. Erina, as many of you probably know, is the managing director of SmartFlyer. She is an incredible ambassador to the brand, but she's also an influencer and a powerhouse woman in our industry. She's had an incredible experience of traveling since a very young age, and she's the leading force behind the company's voice, brand, social media. And I know you had also a little influence in the company name. So I think you've really been able to help a dear friend, Michael Holtz, turn it into the powerhouse that it is today. And I am honored to have you with us. Thank you so much, Erina. Great to have you with us.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, my pleasure. I want to introduce also Travis Levius. Travis, I think many of us know in the industry, is a celebrated travel journalist. He has been writing, and you've probably been reading his articles in some of the best magazines around the world, such as Condé Nast, Vogue, Travel and Leisure, CNN Travel, National Geographic, Forbes, Departure, and the list goes on. He, I think, lives right now, he's in Atlanta, but he lives between the US and most of the time, I think, in London, if I'm not mistaken. And otherwise, gallivanting the world, has covered, I don't know how many countries, over 30 countries, and is an expert in eloquence and written the art of writing. So, Travis, it's a huge pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Tina. I'm glad to be here.
And a new face to me, but I think somebody that we're thrilled to have, I think, and I mentioned it to Brandon Nelson, is the General Counsel and Corporate Secretary for JetBlue. I've been wanting to get somebody from an airline company for some time. I think it's a complicated time for all of us, but especially for the airline industry. So, Brandon, it's a huge pleasure to have you here. Brandon is responsible for the legal, compliance, ESG and sustainability, and cybersecurity at JetBlue. He joined JetBlue in 2005 and has held numerous leadership positions throughout the company. He also serves on the investment committee for the company's wholly owned corporate venture capital fund, JetBlue Technology Ventures. And so prior to joining JetBlue, Brandon practiced corporate and business litigation law at firms in California and New York. And he holds a bachelor degree in business from Howard University and a JD from New York University School of Law. Brandon, fantastic to have you here. Very, very exciting. Thank you for joining us.
Great. Thank you for having me. And I'm actually jealous you're at the East. Hopefully you can eat at Quinto La Juela later on. They have a beautiful outdoor eating area. So I'm very jealous.
Yes, you should be, because it's not only, it's normally it's already great, but for the pandemic, for this new reality we're living, these outside space that they have, and if you've been here, you know Sugar. I went to Sugar and you can almost forget what we're living. It's such a beautiful space. The vibe is so amazing. The music is great. The drinks are flowing. You think for a minute, you're like, okay, this is normal. I know how to do this. This is fantastic. So yes, I'm very happy to be here, and they spoil me, so I can't complain. I wanted to start with a very a question, the same question to all of you, and that's for us to be able to get a little glimpse into what has life been like for you in the past few months. I wanted to ask, and maybe I'll start with Erina. What's your purpose in the travel industry? And simply put, and secondly, if I were to bump into you, which I know I will, in 2022, beginning, something like that, and I'd ask you, hey, what was 2020 like?
Yeah, purpose, that's a big question. But I think my purpose is to tell other people's stories. And I love doing that. And I think it's important. And then as far as 3 years from now, hopefully we're not in this situation any longer. And I can say that 2020 was a year for growth and learning, but most importantly, change.
Very much so. And for you, and then I don't want to get a spoiler alert, but you've also created an amazing initiative in which, is the ultimate silver lining of all this. They say that crisis brings opportunity, but it also brings brilliance, because I think what you've created is a game changer, hopefully in the long term for our industry as a whole. So I'm looking forward to hearing all about that.
Yeah,
Travis,
definitely.
Travis, tell us a little bit about your purpose and what you think you're going to say about 2020 in the future.
Sure. My purpose, on a baseline level as a travel writer, is to inspire people to go out there, to explore, to learn, whether they're just reading or actually taking the steps to actually physically be in those places. But beyond that, honestly, I feel like my purpose in the travel industry is to achieve these amazing bylines and these publications so that people that look like me can be inspired to actually break in.
Very much. No, and again, you've had such a strong narrative, and it's so pleasant to read because you are able to share the sentiments and the emotion that is so strong, but in a very positive, looking forward manner, if that exists. If my eloquence has not been as great as yours, if I put it correctly. Brandon, give us a glimpse into your reality.
Yeah, well, as you said, look, it's been difficult for airlines. That's no secret. But I look at 2020 and how will we look back in 2 years? It's a year of pause and to reflect. And how can we build not just airlines, but the entire travel ecosystem? How can we build it in a way that's sustainable for the future, that engages across a broader demographic? And ultimately, my purpose and our purpose, it's really to bring people together. And so you think of leisure travel, you think of business, but you also think of people visiting friends and relatives, and you think of weddings and funerals and all these other types of engagements that bring people together. And how can we do that in a way that's more impactful, meaningful, and again, that's sustainable in the long run. So I think this is a great opportunity to pause, reflect, and figure out how can we do this better and in a way that's more inclusive and brings a lot more equity to everyone.
And I want to make sure I point out, because when I was doing my little research on your background and being a little nosy, I bumped into a panel discussion you had at Aspen Ideas, and I would recommend everybody to Google it and listen to it, because it's about sustainability, and it's so incredible to hear how involved, how dedicated, how passionate you are about the subject, considering, you work for the big giants that is actually one of the big issues in sustainability. But at the same time, as you said, you are the bridge to connect us all. So, it's one of those things that it's nice to see that you guys are so ahead and so concerned and so focused on it. So if you can Google it and watch it, it's a great panel conversation.
Thank you.
Travis, I thought I'd start with you. You did an amazing skit where you pose a very important question, but instead of me asking it, I'm going to actually see if we can get your video, your little skit up,
Travis,
so we can all watch it, and then we'll go ahead and address it.
Interest in Black travel voices. In an industry where there are still all-white travel magazine mastheads and contributor pages, all-white travel blog campaigns, all-white lineups of travel conference speakers, and all-white Instagram feature accounts, why does it take a racial crisis to finally address the diversity issue? And how can we trust that you won't go back to your homogenous ways once this hot trend ends?
You're so good at that. That face is so good.
Take your time.
We all watch.
It's fantastic. So I have to ask, one of the first things I need to know is, how many times did you try that out? Because I have tried to do, it seems easy, but you do it so flawlessly. And I'm sure it couldn't have, was it like just boom? Or was you like, take number 1,500,000 and,
No, it took some time. I think it took some time putting everything together. I mean, there's so many little details that people might not pick up that is involved with it. But I think I may have done the head tilt thing maybe like 30 right. So yeah.
three times is nothing. You're a natural. But I think the question you pose is one that I'm very interested on your take, because I'm the first one to share on the first diversity talk that we did, that it's a topic that I've always felt was part of me, from living all over the place, from, being very open. And I don't know, I've just always felt it was part of me. But when this whole conversation came to fruition in a much more strong and clear and vocal manner, I realized that a lot of the things that I was doing, I was actually at fault. I hadn't realized how the pictures on my Instagram, for example, were so one-sided. I didn't have diversity. And suddenly this thing came and I thought, oh my God, this is terrible, And so I started fixing everything, I'm like, oh my God, this is wrong. And then suddenly your eyes kind of like, I don't know what happens, but suddenly you see all the mistakes everywhere and you're like, oh no. And so there is for sure a movement of people getting into the conversation and started to see the mistakes. And I was one of them. It was truly out of, not any other thing, but just not seeing it, And so I think there's been a great movement forward of a bit of an aha moment to say, oh my gosh, how do we fix this? And how can I keep the conversation going? How can I keep it alive? How can I get people to join the conversation? How many more people are like me, out of no malice or anything, but just committing mistakes, right? At the same time, there's been a very strong movement where sometimes you feel, we had Keir Matthews, who I adore, on a two talks. He was on our guest at a diversity, and then he joined a recent other panel. But and he was almost saying, like, he told his friend, he said, be careful you walk in the street, they just might call you as president of the nation, because they're just grabbing any guy that's like in the Black community or woman and saying, we need you, because there's been a demand, right, of people wanting to talk about this. So on one side, you want to keep it alive. You want to keep the conversation going. You want to get awareness. And on the other side, there is a kind of a pushback saying enough, like stop doing the diversity panels, just let us move forward. What do you do? Like, what's the right thing to do right now?
Gotcha. My take is that, in June or July, of course, with the reckoning with George Floyd and how it just permeated all industries and being racially aware of, the problems within it, it's just a huge rush of different talks, a huge rush of different opinion pieces and essays. And, I did a few pieces for Travel Age West, the travel trade publication, on those matters. And, I feel like that's sort of the purpose of just making everyone aware, just like yourself, Tina, is like, you read those things, you've been on those panels, you're now more aware. So hopefully we just hope that everyone's now aware. I think now, in order for this to be a more productive movement, I think what we want to see more now than just like talking on panels is just people taking the action to change things. I just hope that people within the first 2 months or 3 months of learning about this, that's just enough for them to move forward and talk to their boards and talk to their employees about diversifying their company or diversifying their social media feeds to reflect the world that we really live in instead of one that's homogenous. So I just think if we can do more application than talking right now, I think we'll be at a better place.
And so and I'm just going to dive in a little bit deeper. So one of the biggest challenges with applying it is knowing how, right? It's how do I do it correctly? How do I do it? How do I make change that is long lasting and not just, let's get somebody to hire, that's not the process you want. It's not a quick fix thing. And that's why sometimes the conversation of bringing experts to say, how do I move this forward? What's the right way to do it? Is a topic that it's tough, even for in the best of cases, it's hard. Change is difficult, right? Sure. It's always but I think you're right. I think it's the movement from awareness to implementing it. Right. Is that right?
Yeah, and the beautiful thing is that now there are, great initiatives and organizations where travel companies, brands can now partner with people that are really focused on diversity. So I'm one of the founding members of the Black Travel Alliance. It's mostly composed of travel influencers, but we did a 72-hour campaign where we demanded those that posted Black squares, said Black Lives Matter. Okay, well, show us your plans of how you're actually going to diversify your team. How are you going to work with influencers? How are you going to pay Black influencers and white influencers the same? So we're able to work and partner with brands that are really serious about those changes. And then there's Travel Unity, it's another nonprofit organization wanting to know like how to do it the right way. There's definitely resources and people that are there waiting to help with those changes.
Yeah, no, that's great. And what I'm going to ask is later on, if you could send us this, and then we can also share it with our community to say, look, if this is something that you're interested in, here are Travis's recommendations, and here's one or two. And one of them for sure is also going to be what Erina is going to be talking about, which is a great initiative. Yeah. Brandon, I wanted to commend you first. You've had an amazing career. You've been with JetBlue for over a decade, which is commendable. Nowadays, people jump from one job to the other, and it's nice to see that that real career path. And I keep wondering, if we were to have a glimpse into Brandon Boy, how did you get to where you are? What was your dream as a child? Did you always want to work with airlines? Who was your role model? I think going back thinking of me as a child and starting in the travel industry, I got to a point that I looked up and I didn't have any woman role models with a family and everything that was so important to me. And maybe that's why I pivoted into entrepreneurship. But how is your story? And I'd love to get a little glimpse of that growing up, and in a way to help possible children or youngsters or university graduates believe that even if you don't see somebody like you above in the career ladder, there is a way to get there.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So my story, did I know? I thought that I would become a lawyer. And part of that, I was very argumentative as a child. Like, I was a terrible child. I was a spoiled little brat, rambunctious, always sort of challenged authority. And as I became older, I thought, well, maybe one way of channeling that is becoming a lawyer. So did I think I'd be a lawyer at an airline? No. But how did I get here? Probably I've been here for 15 years now, as you've noted, so it does make me a dinosaur. But prior to that, working at a couple of law firms, they're awful experiences, great training ground, but you have no passion with what you're doing. And so I very specifically targeted JetBlue. And what I would do is I would go on their website, starting about a year before they actually posted a legal job, and I would check it very, very regularly. Because I was like, this is a very cool company. It's based in New York. It's young. It's entrepreneurial. They have these cool planes. And I love aviation. I love airports. And so I very specifically targeted JetBlue, and I applied for a job here. And that's how I sort of ended up here. Were there role models or anyone that I could look up to? No, I didn't know anyone in this space. David Nealman, we've all read about him. He's a great airline entrepreneur. I had certainly read about him, and that was an inspiration, but an actual sort of mentor or sponsor or any of that sort of stuff was not available to me. I would like to think that there are those role models out there now. But what I like to say to young people who are thinking about getting into travel, it's such an open-minded community. So even though there aren't a ton of people that look like me or Travis or any of us on this in this conversation, people in this community have traveled. They're very open-minded. They like to meet new people and explore new cultures for the most part. Now I'm generalizing, but what that means to me, it's a very fertile ground for us to really enact change and engage this community, because they're better positioned than, let's say, financial services or some of these old line industries. So I think the opportunity here is tremendous.
I agree. It's a people business at the end of the day. And that's what, is so unique and so beautiful about it. If you had to try to hold on to one skill of yours that really helped you get past all the, get up the ladder and get past all the challenges you faced or whatever, what is the skill that really helped you? If you had to pinpoint one, is it?
If I had to pinpoint one, it would be listen more than you speak. And that sounds simple, but that's a way of reading the room. It's EQ, it's learning. Especially when you're in a business or an industry that you don't know. And you can just garner so much more that you can then use going forward in your career. So regardless of the industry or the role that you are in, if you are in a room, you can always better position yourself by absorbing information and then using it going forward rather than being the person that speaks the most, which I often say the person that talks the most in the room is the person.
Very well put. And that's I think it's something for everybody to remember, right? Especially I'm in sales, and so we always have to remember, like, hold back, because everybody just wants to go out and pitch and sell. But that's a very good tip. Erina, I was listening to a podcast that you recently did, Humans of Travel, and when you were talking about when you joined SmartFlyer, you said that there was not a lot of young people, so that for you it was important to create an environment for yourself, and you did that. You created an atmosphere to be happy and also to provide space for women and of course people of color, which I think is of your career. Can you share some examples that might inspire others to join something probably more simple than your big undertaking now?
So Human of Travel, I had such a great conversation with Valerie Chen, who's the host, and she and I talked about our experience in the industry, and I've been in the space for about 14, 15 years now. And, like back then, like you go into an industry event and forget racial diversity. It's like you'd be hard pressed to find a young person in the room. So obviously there are young people in the industry, but not necessarily in the agency space. And when Michael and I met 10 years ago, and I don't know if you know this, but Michael started the company. Michael Holtz is our founder and CEO. He started the company when he was 24. And, the question that I asked him is like, where are all the young people? Because, I felt that it was important because in order for an industry to continue and evolve forward, you need to find the next generation to carry it through, right? So, I mean, to answer your question, there weren't a specific D&I strategy or initiative that we created, which what we did was we love and really truly believe in the space, and so we selfishly, and which was an agency for the modern day traveler and travel consultant. And it worked. And because for the past 10 years, we've been lucky enough to develop really great talent. We've had interns who ended up being travel consultants. We've had interns that moved on to the airline industry. We have second careers who decided that they don't want to do what they want to do because, as Brandon said, travel is an industry filled with very passionate people. So it's all driven by passion. I mean, so no, I didn't. It's to your point. It was to set up an environment for ourselves and in turn create something that's really great, I think.
Yeah, no, and you clearly accomplished that, because when you think about SmartFlyer, there's a lot of people say they're the millennials of the travel industry. And so by making a space that you feel comfortable, then you clearly make it inviting for other people of that same age or that same energy or that same similar vibration. So for sure there's no doubt you accomplished that very well. I wanted to jump back to Brandon. There is, when I was reading, your CEO talked about, when he talked about you in an article, he said that over the years, Brandon has proven a keen ability to navigate JetBlue through the more complexities of the industry's constantly shifting landscape. So when you think of constantly shifting landscape, I think we hit it hard on, right? It's just right now we've hit the biggest rock on the road with everything we're going through. And I want to, there's a belief, we all want to believe that we're going to come out of this stronger, that we're going to come out of this better, that we're going to somehow take this time to transform, to improve, to rethink, to readjust, and we're going to come out of this better. And I would love to hear, how do you see that happening? Because, we rely on the airline industry for sure. And so how do we support each other if we were to think, as we form this industry, how do we move it in a positive way together? How do we?
Yeah. So I do think we are going to come out of this stronger. I mean, a couple of things come to mind immediately. You look at the customer proposition that airlines and hotels and other throughout the travel ecosystem are offering. So recently, a lot of the big airlines announced that they're doing away with change fees. Now they say permanently. And as a lawyer, and you don't have to be a lawyer to know that they can change that at any point. So most of us in this conversation are sort of understand that nuance, but fundamentally, what I think it signals is a shift in the value proposition. So things like change fees that have gotten out of control. You think about cleanliness of aircraft. You think about also density. Where there was this push to put all of these seats on the planes, and we're gonna have the Spirit model or the Frontier or the Ryanair, choose your carrier of choice. You wonder if that's going to change now that sort of space is an asset, right? So whether it's going to be actually 6 feet, probably not, or blocking middle seats forever, that's probably not going to stay with us. But you think about spacing on aircraft. You think about how airlines use their assets, and are you going to see more point-to-point flights and less of this sort of hub and spoke system, because people don't want to be spending a lot of time in airports or on planes. So if you can minimize that and get someone from point A to point B. So I think fundamentally, the value proposition is going to become more customer friendly. I think another thing that's important as you look at all the social justice movement is all companies throughout this space are going to have to embrace their supply chain, and a very diverse supply chain. I think we're going to demand it as consumers. You think about experiences, Airbnb has this great experiences. People are going to want that, but they're going to want experiences that they can relate to and experiences that reflect the places that they go. So if I go to the Caribbean, I don't want to just sit by the pool and see a bunch of people that I see in Long Island or in Manhattan, 1,500 miles north of me. I want to actually engage in something meaningful. So I think it's going to shift in very profound ways, most of which I think are great from a consumer standpoint. They're great from a overall societal benefit, and it just opens up a lot of opportunity for all of us.
And I had asked you, we had a brief conversation about this. I have a girlfriend I was speaking to that's very connected with the sustainability world and or the thought or the movement. And she was saying that she doesn't see herself traveling in the near future, not only because of the pandemic, but because she doesn't want to be having a bigger carbon footprint. And you said that there's a solution here.
Great news for her and everyone. You can offset your travel on almost every airline, certainly domestically, I believe international as well. So you can contribute. There's websites out there. There's sustainable travel. You can calculate your sort of carbon footprint, the emissions that are generated from your travel, not just your airline stay, but your hotel stay. And you can actually make a contribution to projects that offset that. So whether it's a forestry project in Brazil or somewhere else, if it's a solar plant, there are very specific projects that can offset your footprint. And in long term, you think about renewable jet fuel. We're certainly seeing the electrification of vehicles on the ground, but you think in aviation, we have the technologies available for planes to operate on what we call sustainable aviation fuel that's made from renewable sources. So there are all sorts of levers and tools that we can use to completely offset footprint from travel. So there's great news there.
Yeah, no, and it's nice to see, as I said at the beginning, that you guys are investing a lot into that. To hopefully, any time frame that you think that this would actually be coming into fruition, more of a sustainable fuel.
Sure. So right now the issue really is supply. The airlines are all, the demand is there. And it's kind of a longer conversation around energy and refinery plants and how are they changing from producing fuel, sort of traditional carbon fuels and diesel to some extent, and how do you sort of retrofit them to produce the sustainable aviation fuel. But call it by 2025, you'll see a significant increase in the use. So I don't want to put a number out there, but it's, less than 1% now from an industry standpoint. I think that's, well into the double digits, call it 5 years out.
Well, that's relatively soon. It could be something much longer. It all depends on perception, of course, but let's hope that it'll get, that it'll get this tendency to things happen quicker and quicker.
I'm the eternal optimist, as you are, Tina.
Yes, exactly. Travis, I have a tough one for you, and I was really trying to come up with a question that will, make you get all of your, juices thinking and thinking solutions. So I wanted you to imagine a company. I don't know if I'm sure you have one in mind, but we don't need to mention them by name. But if you were to imagine an important business in travel that is maybe not a role model when it comes to diversity. Okay. So this is a prominent brand that is well known and admired. But obviously, as I mentioned, maybe it doesn't have all its ducks in the row when it comes to diversity. Let's say they appoint you CEO tomorrow of that company. So you have a company that is working well, is having a profit, has a good brand, has a good positioning. How do you start change? What would you do? What would be some of your first, just imagining a well-run company, so we don't have to get into the specifications of it, but how do you start this? And in your
Gotcha. Definitely have a team meeting to talk about the changes that are going to be made. And of course, like just with the first few months of the great awakening of the industry, is to make sure that people really understand diversity and awareness of that and what needs to change with the culture. I'm more in the marketing side of things. Don't know what it's like to be a CEO, but I would definitely emphasize marketing because I know the power of seeing yourself represented. So it's about us as a company looking at our marketing materials and saying, does this reflect the world that we're promoting? are there specific countries, maybe in Southeast Asia or the Caribbean, where there might be a tinge of like colonialism with it, where it's like, you know, people that are of color are just serving white people? How do we change that? Are we, when we do marketing with hiring people to be on our brochures, what does that reflect in the world? Are we catering to targeted minority groups as much as we're targeting LGBT? Because there's targeted LGBT ad campaigns, but why not for also Black individuals or Asian individuals or people from Latin American countries? So it's really about knowing that we as a travel company truly represent the world. Why not make sure that the people that we employ, the people that we put on, people that we hire, reflect that?
And I like the thought that you start with a meeting with everybody, because I think sometimes such a little step could be forgotten, and it changes the whole dynamic of the movement, of the desired outcome, when you don't get everybody to join that vision, right?
Right.
Which is so important, and know where you're going for sure. I think it's a movement that so many people want to do, and I think, you know, I always go back to the theme of this, you know, be frightened, but do it anyway. It's scary. Change is scary. You know, you have to really just go out there and do it anyway. Don't think that it's going to happen without any fear. You know, fear is good in a way. I think it gets us to think twice and act fast, but you can't stop you. I think that's the key to it. So Erina, I want to hear about Equator, and I want to know how you put it together. Why now? What are the challenges that you faced, and how do you think it's going to have an impact in our industry?
Yeah, thanks, Tina. So,
sorry, I bundled all the questions in one.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll try to get to it.
Sorry.
So to give you a little bit of a background, and to take it back to the podcast that you mentioned, which is great, by the way. So Humans in Travel, if you like podcasts, put it on your queue. It's Valerie and I recorded that podcast during the first week of BLM March in New York, and simultaneously we opened up the conversation to our own team on the topics of diversity and inclusions, and of course mentioning the current events. What ended up happening was a series of conversations that were insightful, difficult, challenging, but definitely necessary. And we had to come to terms to the fact that although as a company we could be considered diverse, right? We have women, we have LGBTQ, we have minorities, but we are not diverse enough. And so this year is actually SmartFlyer's 30th anniversary. And and to, you know, back last year, beginning of this year, before the pandemic, I had thought about building a nonprofit to celebrate instead of another party, and specifically focusing on scholarship. And because, you know, what better way to celebrate the past than to look forward into the future? So after, you know, obviously over the spring, things changed a lot. And after our conversations with our team, we started working on the nonprofit. We decided to move forward with it. And but we wanted to make sure that we have a focus on BIPOC talent. And it was important to us that it focuses on young people because that's part of our DNA. And the scholarship quickly morphed into the idea of a mentorship program. And so Equator was born. And for those of you who are not familiar with the program because it's so new, it spells EQTR, which stands for Equity in Travel. So in order to build this thing, we wanted to stay true to the cause. So we brought in really smart individuals, much more clever than I could ever hope for. We're working with an advisor. Our principal advisor is Maisha Walker-Roberts, who works at Brown School at the Washington University, and she has deep expertise in educational consulting and evaluation, which is important when it comes time to show our progress and what we've done within the space. We work with Hill & Fox, a Louisville-based, minority-owned, human-centered design company that specializes in nonprofit. And we also reached out to other educational-based nonprofit around the country that focuses on, high school and college-age students. After all of that was put together, we started reaching out to the industry and formed a steering committee made up of members of the industry who are deeply passionate about D&I. So that's kind of the short story, and we're still working on the details. But in a nutshell, Equator is a mentorship program that was formed to create pathways to entrepreneurship and career development opportunities in the luxury travel industry for the BIPOC college-age talent. I say pathways because, the thing about the travel space is that I feel like a lot of people fall into this industry without really meaning to. I know I did. It was a complete accident. And growing up, when I was in college, I didn't think about travel being a career option, which is so crazy because this is such, a beautiful industry to be in with such interesting people. So we wanted to make sure that the future generation is aware of everything that you can do within the space. So this is, I hope I answered most of your questions.
No, you did. But so the idea is so that you're creating, if I understand correctly, you're creating a mentorship program for working with different universities to get people to get almost like create a funnel to the industry as a whole. So if somebody ends up going into becoming travel advisor or hospitality or, into a DMC, it doesn't really matter, right? Or media, it's more about getting the more of a diverse community into travel. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And just the one thing that I would say, it's not just students. We want to make sure that we have, and we worded it very specifically, it's college-age talent, meaning that you don't necessarily have to be in school, because there are amazing, influencers out there who are not in school currently, but they have that entrepreneurial spirit, and they've done really well for themselves, and they want to be an influencer, but they also want to do other things within the space. And
sure.
Why can't they do it just because they're not in school, right?
Sure.
So
yeah.
to answer your question, it's across all verticals. It should be for everyone. This is a company agnostic effort. We started it, but eventually, and my team is currently working on it along with others in the industry, as well as outside sources in education. So this is going to be an industry-wide effort.
Very cool. No, congratulations. And I more power to it. If I can help in any way, please count on me. I think it's as Travis was saying, it's an initiative that a lot of people should join, and in different forms. He has one that's fantastic. So, I think it's all about helping each other through this. So Travis, I want to just end the talk quickly and just get everybody to think about your closing statement. So if everybody was to forget everything that was said on the talk, what would you like people to embrace? What do you want to leave as a little seed in their minds for the weekend to think about, to kind of chew on?
So there are a lot of people there representing companies on the call. I'm sure you've learned a lot, hopefully, within the last few months about what changes need to be made in the industry. Just know that there is help out there if you actually want to make those changes. You don't have to be alone in this. You don't have to struggle with this. There are people, there are companies, there are diversity consultants that I can recommend. that can help you implement those changes if you are serious about making those changes.
Good point. There is help. Call Travis. He can also point you in the right direction, and follow him on social media because it's fantastic. So one of the two or both or all of the above. Brandon, tell us a little bit about what you'd like people to chew on if they were to forget everything we said during this talk.
I would pick up on that awareness from implementation, and ultimately, fundamentally, the way that companies, brands, as an industry, that we're going to respond is when people demand it. And so as we're out there traveling and enjoying these experiences, we have to demand certain things. We have to demand things from the travel, the hotels, the airports, the airlines, and that has to be, representation. It has to be equity. It has to be all of these things that we're now also aware of. That implementation phase really comes from the public and people, and especially this demographic that has a lot of influence because of the types of experiences that we're all fortunate enough to have. That will be really, really impactful. So I think you take that awareness to implementation and start demanding things throughout the entire travel ecosystem.
Yeah, well put. Right back onto the message that Travis had prior. So yeah, no, completely aligned for sure. Erina, how would you like to close it off?
Well, I think collectively we're all at the point where we have absolute awareness that nothing lasts forever, both good and bad, and that it's okay to let go of what was in order to make space for a better, bigger, more inclusive future.
Well said. Very much so. It's more, and something that I try to push, it's about tomorrow. Let's make tomorrow better. And it gives us a chance to think, not undermining the past for sure. I think we can never forget it. And on that note, the next TL Talk next Friday is 9/11. So we're going to have a fantastic panel, and there's something that we can't forget, right? We never want to forget the past, but it is important to have hope and to look forward. And that was one important message I learned in New York during 9/11. We're going to have Mickey Whale from Pro Travel. We're going to have Dan Flannery from Edition. We're going to have Sophie Roberts, who's a award-winning journalist as well. And I think that everybody's point is about implementing, moving forward, keeping the conversation going, and making tomorrow better than yesterday. And I wanted to thank everybody for listening in, for tuning in, for sharing this message with us. Thank you, all of you, for accepting the invitation. Travis, Erina, Brandon, thank you for joining us. It was such a pleasure to have you, and I really appreciate all your insight. I wish everybody a great weekend. Thank you for your contribution, and I hope to see you soon.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you. Travel. It's a people business.
Every human being with any type of skill set.
The ultimate bosses are going to realize they need change.
Be transparent and respectful.
But they're going to need different people.
To another type of professional occupation where the demand has survived.
It is the responsibility for everyone who's on that team to drive home all of those qualities.
Just keep doing and stay completely optimistic. Things are turning, and I know there's only good things in store and great things to come.
The first time I interviewed with the head of America, she said, Tina, we know retail. You know who buys us. You know how to take care of him, how to speak it to him.